everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and right over there, ready and motivated, Nikki Kinzer.
Yes. Hello.
Get this done.
I'm standing up.
Yeah, you are. Why don't you have an official stand-up desk now?
Well, right now I have a crate. It's coming.
All right.
Right now I have a crate and a towel. and my fancy what is that? Bluetooth Yeti thing.
Oh,
no,
the blue mic.
What does that say?
Yeah.
The blue mic. I'm looking at it.
The blue Yeti.
Yeah.
It's
there
fancy.
You go. I'm ready.
Well, it's a digital episode today, and I guess it's a little bit of a different digital episode. I have a couple of recommendations, but it's much. This is a personal. I'm going to tell a story today.
Awesome.
I don't know how awesome it is. We'll see. It's an experiment for me, and therefore an experiment for you. We'll see how it goes. Before we dig in, head over to TakeControlADHD.com and get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there on the website, or please subscribe to the mailing list right there on the homepage. You'll get an email with the latest episode and a whole lot more each and every week. You can always connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at TakeControlADHD and call us at 503-664-4ADD to get your voice and thoughts and questions on this very show.
Can I add something?
Please.
So I did some sneaking around, and I went into iTunes and I looked at our reviews.
Oh.
And yes, and they're lovely. Thank you, everybody, for giving us reviews. But I just want to ask if there's somebody out there who hasn't given us a review and they would feel so inclined to do so, that we would love to hear from you.
Yes.
On iTunes.
We would. It is a great way to surface the show for people who are searching for resources on ADHD. And you know what? It doesn't even matter what country you're in. I actually have a little script that actually looks for reviews in all of the countries where iTunes operates. And so no matter where you are, if you subscribe to us through iTunes, even if you don't, we would love it if you would take a second to go in and leave a review there. It's definitely the largest source of where people find us the most.
Yes.
I'm glad you remembered that. Thank you, Nikki. We have some other follow-up. Listener Lori wrote in to ask us, or to share a tool. It's a plugin for Chrome called OneTab. We have talked before about the craziness that comes with tabs in your web browser. If you use a lot of tabs and you're on Chrome, OneTab is awesome. And you can, so if you have a lot of tabs open, you can hit the OneTab button once you install it, and it groups all of your tabs into a list that is essentially a new sort of web page, a new group. It looks super easy. I don't actually use Chrome as my default browser. I have not personally tried it, but once she recommended it, it has cropped up in a number of different conversations with other enterprising nerds who apparently use this thing. So I'm last to the party, but it may be enough to make me switch. So I'm definitely going to give it a shot. OneTab, it's one-tab.com. Thank you so much, Lori.
What do you use?
I use Safari. Chrome? I use Safari. I'm on a Mac. I like Safari. I think it's fast. It doesn't eat up memory. And if you're on a laptop, Chrome is a notorious battery hog. So I can't use my system as long when I'm using Chrome if I'm on battery power. And so I just stick to Safari. It's super fast and lean, and it's actually making me want to look for a tab manager like OneTab that works for Safari. I just haven't gotten to it yet. So, what are you using? You use Chrome?
Well, I use Chrome, and I swear to God, I thought you were the one that told me to use Chrome. Because I used to use Safari.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I've gone back and forth over the years. The battery thing is the thing that really pushed me over the edge. I would notice on the order of hours difference if I'm doing heavy web work, just leaving Chrome even open. It's a terrible battery hog. It just hasn't been optimized that well for battery and being sensitive to processors. And
I don't use a desktop.
Yeah, so right. You don't use a laptop.
Or
right.
I use a desktop, but I don't use a laptop. Yeah. See, I'm all confused.
Yeah. Right. Well,
desktop, laptop. It's a good thing you're doing the show and not me. I'm calling the Yeti the Bluetooth. I don't know what I'm doing.
You're talking into a tooth. Well, and this is actually an interesting point, because one of the biggest pitches for OneTab is 95% memory reduction, and when you reduce memory, you reduce power. And so this is obviously OneTab is designed in some part one is a convenience, but two, because Chrome can get very inefficient when you have a lot of tabs open. So something to think about. Your mileage may vary, but it looks like a great little tool. So thank you, Lori. We did a show. It was months and months ago, maybe a year ago, where somebody had written in to talk about asking for support at their organization for working in their ADHD, and we did a whole episode on this, and I'm going to have to search for it. I don't quite remember the episode number, but I'll put it in the show notes. And we just got some feedback now here a year later from this person, works at a very, very large manufacturing organization. He says he wants to share his excitement with us in seeing his organization changing from a top-down authoritarian style of management to a bottom-up management approach, and shares some of the internal documentation that the company is now promoting, and it looks really beautiful. And it's as a result, largely, of working with his team. And he says, in this email, thanks for being constructively disruptive, and by making changes in the organization, a very large organization, by being constructively disruptive, by asking for help, and by sharing resources to teach managers how to be more helpful as well. I think it's a great story. So,
it is.
While we can't share, we're not sharing the specifics of the company. But what we can say is that this works if you approach it, if you approach it right, if you approach it well and authentically and transparently and helpfully. Honestly, I mean, all of these things are good words to use when you're asking for help. So, yeah. And we got one more. This is from friend of the show and listener Susan, who says, a few years ago, my husband came up with the idea of setting a New Year's resolution for ourselves and one for each person in our family. We have 2 teenage sons. The resolutions are suggested and then agreed upon on January 1st. We try to make them fun and something that pushes us towards something we've always said we want to do. For example, my son had me bake a pumpkin pie completely from scratch, including growing the pumpkin, since I like to garden. My husband is learning how to forge metal, and this year I challenged him to make me a rose. We have a lot of fun doing it and review our progress monthly.
I love that.
So fun.
Well, it is fun. And I appreciate her sharing that, because that is such a positive spin to resolutions. Because when I think of, making goals or what, New Year's resolutions sort of as a whole, you're always thinking about improving something, making it better, or changing something. And it's not always fun, right? And I love that this is more of like, hey, what do you want to do? What's on your bucket list? And kind of challenging you to do that. And baking a pumpkin pie completely from scratch with the pumpkin, that's pretty darn cool. So
thank you, Susan. And this reminds me, I have to catch up with you on my challenge.
Yes. How's that going? Because I bet you have nothing in your house.
That is disappointingly, Nikki, that is not true. It's terrible. I feel like we get rid of giant bags of crap, and it's still, our house looks, there are areas that look unchanged. Now, there are some drawers and some cabinets that we open up and they look beautiful. But I said to my wife the other day, I said, you know what? I think we need to keep going for at least another month and see what happens. So on February 1st, we're going to start from scratch again with one thing. And so we figure we're just going to ride it like a wave of decluttering intensity. And so we'll pick one thing, and then 2 things, and then 3 things on the 3rd, 4 things on the 4th, until we get to the 28th and see how it goes. It is remarkably easy, because once you're in this mindset, particularly now that we're in the 20s, finding things that I just don't love, that I don't get the joy out of, that I'm not finding, that connection to, that emotional connection to, it's really easy to start getting rid of stuff. And I don't know if I'm developing a fond addiction to decluttering. I don't know that that's necessarily the worst thing. But is there a condition that is the inverse of hoarding? Like if I'm going to start getting rid of doors in my house, eventually there'll be no hinges. Don't get rid of doors.
Yeah. Well, it's that minimalist theory. I mean, you might get a tiny house. Are you staying consistent? I have to ask you that. Have you done every day?
Oh, yes. Have not missed a day.
Wow, that's impressive, Pete.
And that's largely because we're doing this together. And so my wife and I, we will get together and we will do, sometimes she takes it, sometimes I take it. Like if it's, one day might be predominantly my closet. and we'll just get rid of, I will take over coming up with the, 20 things out of my closet. Stunning to me that I have 20 things in my closet that I could get rid of, that aren't clothes. My closet has a floor. I didn't even know that.
With a lot of stuff. So, not anymore because you're getting rid of it.
Yeah.
So I have to update you on something that's goal related.
Yes.
Since we're on the topic.
Sure.
So one of my goals, one of my little mini habits was to meditate for 1 minute. And I've been tracking. I have I think 4 mini habits that I've been tracking since the beginning of January. And one of them is to meditate for 1 minute. And I was doing really well. And then I noticed, because it was like staring at me, that I missed 5 days. I missed 5 days in a row of meditating for 1 minute. Like how could I not find time to meditate for 1 minute, right?
Yeah. How did that happen?
How did that happen?
You don't really have any memory of it? They just went away?
No, I just remember, like I do. Gosh, that's a good question, because that's totally something I would ask one of my clients. Do you remember?
I learned it from watching you, Mom.
I know. Oh boy, now I have to think. Now, did I remember? I know, like I remember the first time I didn't do it. Okay, whatever. I'm trying. I'm practicing, right? I'm going into the mentality of practice. I'm not going to be hard on myself. Second day, I think it was the weekend, so I just sort of discounted it as being a weekend thing. But then, you start looking at your tracking method and you see 5 empty boxes and you realize, okay, there's an issue here. Like I have to pay attention to this, because 5 days for not meditating is really ridiculous when I have set the goal for 1 minute. I mean, this isn't, 20 minutes of sitting in silence. So I had to reflect and think about what was stopping me. So I'm coaching myself. What's stopping me from, doing the 1 minute?
Is that your self-coaching voice?
Yes, that's my self-coaching voice.
What's stopping me from
What's stopping me?
It's the ADHD bear.
What is my roadblock? But you know what? After doing a little bit of reflection, I did figure out what it is.
What is it?
And I know people are going to understand this. Okay, when I started this process, my thought was, okay, I'm going to sit down in my office on the floor, and I'm going to turn the light off, and I'm going to listen to my Calm app, and I'm going to meditate. And I was always meditating for longer than a minute, because that was just sort of the mini goal. But I usually would do like 3 to 5 minutes. And sometimes I do like a little, guided meditation program thing that would be like 12 minutes.
Yeah, right.
And that's what I was doing. Well, the 5 days that I didn't do it, it was those extra steps that were stopping me from doing it. Like I didn't think about it at the time. So to answer your question, I didn't really think, I don't want to get on the floor and meditate right now. But that really was what was stopping me, was that extra step of having to sit comfortably on the floor, turn off the light, get my app ready, and do it. So I changed it, because if you read the book, Mini Habits, one of the things he says is that if you're not doing it every day, you have to change the habit. You have to make it easier. So I decided that I don't have to get on the floor to meditate. I'm going to just stay in my desk chair. And when I'm ready to do it, I'm going to do it. And I've done it every day since I've made that adjustment.
There you go. Because you know what you need to do to meditate? And sometimes you don't even need to do this. You just need to close your eyes.
I know.
You can do it standing up, sitting down.
I can do it anywhere.
On a train, on a plane. You can do it in a car.
Yeah, well, not if you're driving.
Right. Someone else's, you could do it very far. See where I'm going with here. It's simple.
I know. It is. And that's, and I guess that's what I want to share with everybody, is that I didn't do it, and I had to figure out why. And then I tweaked it, and now I'm doing it, and I feel great.
That is awesome. That is fantastic. Congratulations, Nikki. That is wonderful. Wonderful stuff. I am, in terms of meditation, I haven't done a whole lot of just straight up like guided meditation, but I will tell you, one of my clients, some of the audio work that I do is I prepare, she does guided meditations, and I have to edit them. And it's one of the most difficult things that I do, because I have to actually edit a guided voice telling you to relax. And it is the hardest thing I do, because I practically meditate right there.
I was going to say,
I could practically just black out. I'm focusing on my voice, and I realize, that's 5 minutes I have to go back and listen to it again.
But then you tell yourself, but that's okay. Let the thought go by.
That's right.
Don't put any judgment on it.
Focus on it. Like, that's my job. So anyway.
That's tough.
Let's dig into my story, can we?
Yeah. Yes, right. Please.
So the theme I'm talking about here is surrender, and hopefully it'll come clear why surrender has been an important word for me here. The story is sort of three reasons I'd like to share with you today. First of all, it's a technology story, right? It's kind of involves the foundation of my business. It's an ADHD story. I was really surprised by the impact that this event had on my activity and my interest and my energy and my emotional state. And number three, frankly, it's just ironic because I'm usually so on top of my technology that if this can happen to me, frankly, it can happen to anyone. And so let my life serve as a warning to others, that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So the setup of the story is this. This is kind of the technology stuff, right? So for those of you who don't know, I am also a photographer and videographer in addition to my work as a podcaster. And I've been shooting for a long time, you know? I mean, I started in broadcasting, you know, so I was on television and fell in love with cameras and started the video work. I sort of backed into still photography, but I've been shooting in some way, shape, or form all my life. Only about 10 years or so have I been paid to shoot still photography and videography, but still, a long time. And the experience overall has been pretty fantastic. And I have big cameras, right? As a result, I've got lots of gear, and the cameras I use take large photos. I shoot in what's called RAW format. So, a simple comparison, a JPEG image out of your iPhone or your Galaxy might be 2.5 megabytes in size, just in terms of the data footprint it takes up on your phone. And one photo from my camera is closer to 40 megabytes, 40 to 45. So they're very large. That means they take up a lot of space. In storing these raw photos, it requires a big drive, right, or a set of drives. So I have this thing, it's called a Drobo. And a Drobo is a storage array. It's magical. It's a black box. It's very, very simple. And when you take the little front face off of it, it has space inside of it for 5 regular hard drives. Right, so you go to Best Buy, you can buy what they call them naked hard drives, which sounds so pornographic, but it just means there's no case on them. You're supposed to stick them into something else, right? These naked hard drives, you can put, and they can be any size. You can mix and match sizes, 1 terabyte drive, 2 terabyte, 3 terabyte. What happens when you put all these drives in and plug it into your computer? The Drobo is seen by the computer as one external hard drive, right? So I have my Drobo set up, and I plug it in and had 12 terabytes of data available to store on it. Okay, so a lot of data. This is a very, very big device. And what's beautiful about the Drobo is if one of those naked hard drives fails, you can just pop it out and replace it, and your data is not lost. You never lose anything on the Drobo because it's this magical way of like moving data around on the drives so that it's always duplicated internally. It's a fascinating and wonderful thing, but it is proprietary to Drobo. They invented this thing. It's essentially a version of RAID. If you're a technologist, you know what a RAID array is. That's what this is, but it's proprietary, and that's the problem that I ended up having. When it works really, really well. So on this Drobo, on this hard drive, I had all of my client projects for the last 10 years. All of the old video projects, Final Cut projects that I've been working on. And of course, I had the master raw files of all of my photography. So this box really ends up being the sum of my professional career. And that doesn't even start to catalog all the personal files that I had stored there. So most of the projects on this drive were finished. Right, so I didn't need the raw Final Cut source of the films that I'd worked on for clients because they were finished. They're on Vimeo or YouTube, and my clients have them. I don't really need them anymore. I was saving them because I had the space to save them, and if I ever need to go back and find assets, it's convenient, but it's not necessary. So the photos, however, were not finished. They were raw. Right, to publish them, it means you have to develop them. And so I'd have to grab the raw file, I'd have to post-process it, develop it, make it the photo that I want to show the world, then render it out and upload it to a sharing service like Flickr or Facebook or whatever I want to do with it, or make an art print of it or something like that. But they were unfinished, and I didn't have finished versions of most of these projects. In fact, I have on a particular shoot day that's not for a client, I might publish immediately 1, 2, maybe 3 photos, and then I'd put the rest in my archive to come back to later when I feel up to it. This drive was also connected to my CrashPlan online backup account, and it was dutifully plugging away at moving my files, copying my files to secure storage in the cloud. I think in terms of just photos, there were roughly 100,000 raw images on this drive.
100,000. So I just want to clarify, because I'm listening and I'm trying to follow you. The Drobo was storing these things, but you also had the CrashPlan as a second kind of like, it was also going there to go to the iCloud. So you were kind of saving it in 3 places, right? Because you had the backup in the Drobo, and then you had the Drobo going to the cloud.
Well, remember, these raw photos, they're so big, my internal hard drive on my computer is not big enough to store them all.
Oh, I see. So they were going straight to the Drobo.
The raw, I was working off of the Drobo. When I would want to go, reach into the Drobo and get finish a photo, it would live, the main file would live on the Drobo, but also ideally syncing up to CrashPlan as my offsite backup, right? So this is a best practice thing, right?
We've talked about it before.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. So now let me move into part 2 of my horrible story called The Incident. In summer of 2016, it's about 6 months ago, we took our annual trip to New York, 2 weeks away, totally disconnected. I got back from the trip, I unpacked everything, and I powered up all my gear. The Drobo reads on my computer, failure to mount. Now, confusing, right? Drives have failed before. I have never seen this error. So I did some searching, and others on the internet had seen this error too. Some of them had some steps to fix it. I tried those steps. They didn't work for me. I contacted Drobo. They said, hey, you know what? Your Drobo is EOL'd. You know what that means? End of life. That means we don't support you anymore. You are a year out of warranty on your device. So if you want to talk to us, you have to pay us per incident service. So that was $100. I had to pay Drobo in order to reach into their engineering smarts, to the people who made this thing, and have them help me figure it out.
When this error happened, did it happen right around the 1 year, or was it
had been end of life for a year, right? So it.
And how long have you had this?
Well, at this point, it would have been like 4 years.
So you'd had it for 4 years. Yeah. Something went wrong. You reached out, and they're saying, "No, this is the end of life." So you got to pay. You don't have a warranty.
It was great that they even offered support, because I'll tell you, I started calling around to drive recovery services. Right, these are the people who have the expertise to do forensic analysis on your drive, and because of the proprietary nature of the Drobo, they said it was going to cost. It would start at about $1,500 just to get started, but it could range in the $7,000 to $9,000 to recover my data. That's a skill set that I don't have. So I did the things that Drobo recommended, and they said on the last support request, this is with the engineers who built the thing. If this doesn't work, we're all out of ideas. That was the last message that I got. So now you can imagine. I also have to say, this event happened in June of 2016, July. I didn't touch it. I powered it off and didn't touch it for 6 months, and that's where the brain damage sets in. Right?
You were avoiding it,
Nikki. The shock of the awareness that so much of my life, my work product, I felt like I'd been hit in the head with a shovel. I was paralyzed.
How do you even face it? Right. Yeah.
I couldn't work. Literally couldn't work on photography. I mean, I had a few client projects that were already scheduled, and I shot those. But otherwise, I did not pick up a camera for 6 months at all. I went from taking 1,000 to 2,000 personal photos a month to about 1,000 photos over 6 months, and none of them were personal. They were all for client projects. I mean, I was paralyzed, and this is the point of the whole story. My brain told me, if I lost all of that history, what could possibly be the point of moving to the future, right? I did not. Why should I pick up a camera? I've lost everything I've done for the last 20 years. So what's the point? Who cares? If it can be gone that quickly, who cares? I can't stress enough how much brain damage that is. Of course, it's brain damage. And you're probably asking, if you're listening to the story, what about CrashPlan? That is a great question, right? Why didn't I just go to CrashPlan? Well, uploading from these services is slow. And because of the size of the drive that was attached to CrashPlan and the fact that it was a network drive, right? It wasn't just a direct connect drive. The data transfer to CrashPlan was very, very slow. And over months and months and months of uploading to CrashPlan, my Drobo had not reached the photo directory. It was still working on uploading Final Cut files and client files, but hadn't gotten to P for Photo Masters. You see what's going on there?
Yes.
So
yes.
I could recover stuff that I didn't want or need, and so the system was in place. What was against me was time. In this case of a failure, I had never, and I wasn't even paying attention to it. I wasn't paying attention to how fast it was uploading. So I went out to breakfast, and I was in this space of immense grief and paralysis, and as I opened this up again to start working with Drobo in December, and I posted something to Facebook, and this friend of mine from he lives up near Seattle, and he said, I'm going to be down there this weekend. Let's go get some breakfast and we'll talk about it. Now this guy happens to be an engineer. He actually is charged with managing several very, very large data centers across the country. And what is a data center but a building full of hard drives? Like, if there's a guy, software engineer who knows about more about how hard drives and data structures work, I've never met him. This is the guy. Mm-hmm. And he sat down and essentially, told me the same things. First of all, he said, "Hey, I'm kind of a data recovery hobbyist. So, if we can't get the data back, or if you can't get the data back through Drobo, or I'd be happy to take it and take a look at it. But you got to know that because of the proprietary nature of the Drobo, anything I do will be destructive. Which means, I'll go scraping around for stuff, but if I can't find it, there's a chance it's going to be erased. Like, just the act of searching for it will erase it if it doesn't work." And so there you go. I'm in this space of paralysis and grief, and he's looking at me after telling me all of this, and I'm resolving myself to this, just denial that this is possibly happening, that my professional career is locked in a stupid black box. And he says, "So what are you going to do?" And for the first time in 6 months, well, I think that was the moment that it hit me that I had fallen into my own trap, right? I'd fallen into it, and I didn't even see it. I tricked myself into thinking that I was that I was only this one thing circumstantially, right? That I was only a photographer because of the history that was sitting on this Drobo. And when he asked that question, out of instinct, I remember so clearly. I said, "Well, I guess I better start shooting."
Wow.
Whew, it was tough. It was tough because it wasn't that, just being able to say that was not coming face to face with the fact that the Drobo is so stupid and failed, right? My Drobo. I don't say anything about other Drobos. This Drobo, I've had multiple Drobos over the years, and it served me well. This is a thing that happens to technology, right? It's a thing that happens to
not perfect
technology. It's not.
Yeah.
It wears out. It falls apart. Sometimes you just can't. You don't know when it's going to go south. There are only some things that you can do to try to mitigate the failures that will occur invariably. Right. And so, I have had so many people try to tell me where my points of failure were, which is really, not that helpful. I know there were plenty, and there were some big ones. The biggest being, I'm not a major enterprise with huge IT budget, right? I can't afford to do the things to recover this kind of data that a big company might, have no problem with. One of the problems was CrashPlan. It's a great service, but it was very, very slow. And it turns out on my data on that big drive, CrashPlan was so mired in these videos, it didn't get to the data I needed. I had the system. I had the redundant storage, online, offsite backup. It was just that time was not on my side. So today, I have a new 12 terabyte archive hard drive, and I started clean. It's not a Drobo. I have a new Time Machine. It's the Mac specific kind of always on backup drive. And I hadn't really been using Time Machine because most of my current projects are in a Dropbox folder, and that's always synced and it's always up to date. I verify that regularly. But now I have this Time Machine as an additional backup. That's on my core laptop. I have a new Scratch drive for current projects that's bigger than my computer but smaller than the archive drive. And all of these drives in my Mac are connected to Backblaze. And I'm telling you, in just a few weeks, Backblaze uploaded my whole Mac, my Scratch drive, and the new contents of my new archive drive without a hitch. I have tested a restore. It has been super reliable and incredibly fast. And so I am really pleased with the technology that I have set up right now, because you'll see now I have, I have verified that the axiom, if in terms of backup and archive, 2 is 1, 1 is none, right? I've got 2 copies of everything in multiple places, and that gives me a sense of solace. But it also has changed my behavior. I now have each of my hard drives, I've added as a contact. I've named them, and they're a contact in my address book, because the address book is connected to the calendar by default on the Mac. And when you put a contact in there with a birthday of when you buy it, then it'll say, this hard drive's birthday is on such and such a date. Just like, Nikki's birthday, she's however many years old, because I have your birthday in there. I can see your age in my calendar. Well, now
I'm 29.
Exactly. And it's just there every year. So
I'm always 29.
I have my computer and my hard drives and everything as contacts with birthdays, so I can see on my calendar how old they are. When they hit 3 years, I go buy a new one. Like, I am budgeting for that. I will not have anything fall that far out of warranty again. I just cannot afford the grief and the emotional upset. So that's
Wow.
one thing, but that's just the technology part, right? I think the biggest awakening was figuring out what my brain did to my life for 6 months. It took me into a very dark place. And I am somebody who, we've done this podcast for years, and I am somebody who likes to think that I'm pretty on top of my living systems. And I didn't even know I had failed it. I guess this is, again, as I started with, this is a story of kind of, it can happen to the best of us. It cost me 6 months of creating something I deeply love. And, I wasn't getting better. I wasn't improving. I wasn't changing, because I was completely stagnant. And I had essentially given up on this thing that I built a career around. And that, once I sort of woke up to that, I realized that hurts. I've been hurting myself, and wasn't living sort of honestly and authentically.
A couple things that come to mind. First of all, thank you for sharing, because I know that we have a lot of loyal listeners, and I think that they're going to share in your grief and in your disappointment, and because they know. They've heard you talk about technology, and if they haven't seen your photos, I can attest to that, how beautiful they are. You're a wonderful photographer, very talented. And videographer, because you've done some of those things for me, for my business.
That's right. I don't have those anymore, by the way.
That's okay. We don't need those. But, so first of all, I give you a lot, or I want to acknowledge you for having the courage to talk about it and to bring it to our audience, because, that's not easy. It's definitely coming from a place of vulnerability. You are admitting that this didn't work the way that I thought it was going to. No, and I don't think it's even a fault of you or doing anything that you did. It just happened, and now you have to deal with it. But what I love, and I hope that people really get out of your story, is the perseverance that you showed, and that you gave yourself the grace and the time that you needed to grieve over that. And yeah, you went to a dark place, but sometimes we have to go to those dark places to look at the light, right? And that's exactly what you did. And so that timing, I believe things happen for a reason. The timing of your friend coming down when he did, and having that conversation with you, and you being able to answer him in a way that was so distinct, didn't take a lot of thought. You just knew at that moment, I have to continue shooting. I have to keep doing this. I think that, your friend came down here for, the timing was perfect. He came down here for a reason. You had that conversation. You're talking about these things. And without hesitation, when he asked you that question, you knew what you needed to do. And that was, I'm going to keep shooting. And I just think that that's really inspiring, because that was probably one of the worst things that have ever happened to you in your career. And you were able to not let it beat you down. It didn't get you. You got back up. It took time, and I'm sure it still hurts, and it probably always will. But I also know, because I know of your photography and I know you as a person, you're going to still create beautiful, beautiful work. And I just really appreciate you sharing that. And I, thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to, this was the thing that was kind of surprising to me about this whole experience. Like when he asked me that question and I said, I got to start shooting, I had no way of predicting. Like I would not have been able to tell you, I think I'm ready to start shooting again. Like that was just, it was like an instinct, right? It was a gut response. I was in a point of grief until I wasn't, and I have no idea what it was that took me out of it. And I guess that lesson is, when you fall out of awareness and you don't know it, like I did, you also sometimes surprise yourself by falling back into it. And so I guess be open to that, because that's something that I'm trying to keep more front of mind, like just to be aware of my own space and how I'm engaging in the world, because this is a 6-month example where I wasn't.
What's really, I think, important about what you just said is that it can happen if you're paying attention and you're aware and you're open to when those moments might happen, that shift, right? From grief to, okay, I need to move forward. You had that in a conversation, right? You had that in a conversation with a friend. And so that's something that I would want to, have people think about. It's like, what is being, or what's catching your attention? Is it something you read? Is it something that you see? Is there a quote that all of a sudden just really touches you? I mean, it's those subtle little things. They're not big. It doesn't like you just, it doesn't just crash into your front door and like, okay, you're over it now.
Yeah,
but it's these little subtle things that, like you said, you didn't even think about how you were going to answer that question. You just were there. So I just think it's a great story. I appreciate you sharing it. And, it's not just about technology and, back up and change your system. And what did you learn from it? I mean, obviously you learned from it because you have a new system now, but I think it goes much deeper than that.
Well, so yeah, and I'm definitely beyond the technology part. Like I don't know. I still don't know what the final ultimate state is, but I can tell you I'm closer and closer every day to saying, you know what, I know what the ultimate state is, and I'm done. Like I'm really done. It looks so bad. The prognosis looks so bad, and I've kind of accepted the idea that I'm starting again. And so, that feels like a very different place than I have been about this particular issue. So I thank you for letting me share it. I hope the story is useful to someone out there. And if not, then we'll talk to you next week, and I'm sure that will be of interest. Let's count on that. And you know what?
Something, yes,
something's going to be of interest. And if you want to, if you want to catch up with some of the new stuff, the new photography, you can find it on my Instagram. I'll put a link in the show notes. I'd love you to check it out. Some of the new stuff.
Yes, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. I want you to tell people. So obviously Instagram, but where Pete Wright? Well, I mean, what do they do? How can they find your work?
Well, Instagram.
Where are you, Pete Wright? Where are you?
My photo site is rashpixel.photo, and so that's a fine place to find me. And Instagram.com, my username is rashpixel on Instagram.com. And so I started for years, I did a daily photo where every day I published just a photo that I was interested in, and it wasn't a client photo. It was just a person or a thing that I was out shooting, and that really kept me motivated. And I stopped doing that in 2016, and so in some ways I see the big failure in the middle of 2016 as a reminder that I need to keep my eye on photography because I didn't post the daily photo at all really in 2016. And so now I'm back to doing it. And here we are on day 27, and I still need to go in and post today's photo, but I've hit it every day, and
that's on your Facebook page?
It's everywhere. I post it to my
it's everywhere.
To Facebook, okay. I post it to Instagram, I post it to the original, like, Instagram sometimes crops it, not like I want. So the original, if you want to see the original, it's either rashpixel.photo or you can follow me on Facebook. I'm great with that.
Okay, so I have to just say one thing. Yeah. This last photo, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, it looked like a poster for a horror movie. It was the creepiest thing I've ever seen. Awesome. I mean, it's really cool. So you guys have to really check this out. But what was going on with her mouth? Like, what is that? Like, I can totally see the child sleeping, but like, what's above her?
I'll tell you. Do you want the brief story? Like, honestly, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So there are a couple. Yesterday's and today is from the same shoot. I have the great luck to be connected with a young man who is he's about to start at University of Colorado at Boulder. He's from Boston, and he is an aspiring Hollywood makeup artist. And I connect with him. His family happens to go to the same vacation spot that I attend. He has been at my kids' camp counselor for a number of years, and he loves doing crazy makeup. And so the last 2 years we've set up a shoot where he gets his volunteer friends to come over to his house, and he does just crazy nightmarish makeup to them.
Oh my gosh, that totally makes sense.
We set up a shoot.
Now.
I do the photography. And so last year we had some just terrible, horrible, you'll see if you scroll through my Instagram feed, you'll find them. They're just grotesque, but it's a great showcase of a young guy's great work. And I think he's really gonna go places. So if I can help him with his portfolio, so much the better. It's been a real treat to work with him.
Oh, it totally looked like a movie poster for a horror movie. You guys did fantastic. And now that completely makes sense, because I'm just thinking you're like, I didn't even know. I'm like, what? How did he do that? Did he put something in the photo? Did he edit it some way? Like, and then I'm looking at it and it's like, it's scaring me. I don't even want to look at it anymore. Well, great work. I mean, especially if you're into horror stuff. Oh my gosh. You guys should go to Hollywood and make $1 billion.
Totally. Well, and I'll put the link to his name's Philip Tybel, and he's pretty public on Instagram too. And so I'll put a link to his stuff. He does some stuff that I didn't shoot that's just really, I mean, it's amazing. If you're into horror makeup or bizarre, like Tim Burton style stuff, he's really very talented young man. So props to Phil.
Good luck to him in his career. Yeah. That's awesome.
Thank you, Nikki, for the platform, and thank you everybody for listening. I again hope it helps. And in the meantime, back up, people. Just back up.
Yeah, right.
Back up. 2 is 1, 1 is 9.
And get back up on the horse when the horse and you fall.
Back up, then get back up. Thanks, everybody. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright. We'll catch you next week right here on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.